Welcome to the DIY Pest Control Podcast, where you get the best info for those who want to perform their own pest control. The DIY Pest Control Podcast is brought to you by Nature Pest. Nature Pest has been providing the finest in commercial and residential integrated pest management for structural, lawns, trees, shrubs, and mosquitoes with better control and less contamination at an affordable price. For more info, visit us at naturepest.com. Hi folks, Frank the Pest Geek here, host of the Pest Geek Podcast and owner of Nature Pest, a holistic pest management firm that focuses on organic, compliant facilities, integrated pest management. I know that's a mouthful, for residential and commercial environments. Basically, what do? We take the same principles that are done in hospitals, hotels, laboratories, basically high-level facilities, and we bring that to the home or business. This is what we specialize in. And what we're going to be discussing is holistic pest control, the 5 most important things that people need to understand in order to get this kind of service to be effective for them. And we're going to go ahead and get into that right now. This is why we got so many laws and so many problems with people not understanding that you can't do stuff like this. Well, no amount of rodenticide boxes is going to help you if this is your common condition. This is more common than you think in associations. The reason that this place was like this is because there was only 2 pickups a week. It was more garbage being put out than you can actually haul away in a week. The solution was to add 2 more days. The owner of the property did not want to spend the money. They had rodents, raccoons in there. We would go in, and we've actually cleaned it out several times and put it all in there. By the time we picked it all up, that dumpster was full again, and they just had picked it up. Again, no amount of rodent station. There's a milk box right there. There's all that food. Why would a rat? And then you're wondering why you have rat problems in the property. No amount of rodenticide. You can't throw it out. I see people throwing rodenticide out in the yards and in the locals, just throwing it out for the rats to eat it. That's illegal. And this is where we run into problems where people get fined and where they stop allowing people to use certain products because of the misuse. You're in the home and there's a bag of dog food right there and they got a rodent problem. I just had a call from a client who said, I've got a rat that got in the house and we can't catch it. We've been trying to catch it for weeks. You can't catch it. And then he says, well, I've got 2 dogs and a cat. And I said, okay, let me ask you this. Are you leaving food out for the dog to feed at night? Because you're leaving water and food out all day long for this dog. Yes. And I said, well, that's why you're not catching the rat. The rodent knows he can go every single day to that one spot and eat with no problems. What do? I said very simply, you take the food away from the dog and you only feed the dog when the dog is mealtime. You don't leave it. Are you leaving it overnight? Yes. You're leaving the water overnight? Yes. Well, he's got food and water. You're never going to catch him. So I told him to do this. He says, well, I got to talk to my wife and see how she feels about that. And I said, well, until you do that, understand you're not going to catch this rat. He's not going to go and eat the food that he's already used to eating, eat something else on that trap. You take away the food and you put the same dog food in the trap and watch how you catch him very quickly. Let me see what I'm going to do. I got to convince my wife. And this is common, people leaving food out for the dog, thinking the dog needs to eat all night. The dog can eat 2 meals a day. You feel guilty that you leave the dog alone all day long and the dog can't feed himself. You can feed him in the morning. You can feed him in the afternoon when you get there. And you take the food away and you don't put him on an all-night buffet. And you solve the roach problem. This also happens when we have German roach issues, when we have American roach issues. We can't seem to get the control, and we're asking the client, are you leaving food out for the dog? And they're telling us no. And then we come in and find the bowl full of food one evening when they called us out. People do things on emotions that make no sense. But if you're a landlord, if you're a building engineer, a maintenance engineer, you got to understand that you got to know to look for these problems, because that's how we end up with these issues that we later can't control. Understand that, well, I keep my house super clean. Well, here's underneath a dishwasher. That dishwasher's been there probably 18 to 20 years. All kinds of food and drink have fallen under there. You can see it. There's crud everywhere. Guess what? It can be clean. You cleaned all around. I couldn't find any dirt anywhere, but underneath there, if a roach makes it in, he's going to have all the food he needs. If ants make it in, people say, I've got sugar ants. I said, no, you don't have sugar ants, because most of the ants that invade homes are omnivorous. They eat proteins, they eat carbohydrates, they eat oils, and they eat sugars. And if you have grains of rice, and if you have anything that fell under there, when we're trying to control a problem, it's not impossible, it makes it more difficult. The longer time I have to be there, the more trips I have to make, the more I have to charge you. And understand that there's going to be food. Here is an example of a grease and oil in the bottom of a stove top. That's enough to feed roaches. They'll feed on anything. So if we're getting control and we're using baits, which are more effective, understand that it's competing with the existing food. There is a dumpster, and there you see the rodent station way in the back. And there is all kinds of food on the floor. Chances are that station can't be maintained. When the technician comes in, he has to move that dumpster. You got all this food on the floor. There's crud everywhere. Let's look at this one. That needs to be pressure washed. Listen, dumpster rooms need to be pressure washed at least once a month. The garbage chutes need to be treated every month for flies and crud that gets stuck of all the food and all the liquids on the way down, to remove fly problems. If this hasn't been cleaned probably in years, hasn't been pressure washed. So hygiene is important to remove the food particles that they're going to have access to. And if you start washing this, you find out you have less rodents, less roaches, less flies. Chemical is not the solution to this. You will never control any of these problems with chemical alone. It is impossible. You leave the dishes overnight. And now roaches and everything have all this natural food to eat, and we're trying to do a roach service. And you have to clean everything every day, leave it spotless. Don't give them food to eat that competes with baits, because most people don't understand that baits are food-grade pesticides. They have foods in them to attract the roaches, to attract the ants, to attract the rodent. And if the rodent can find this in the kitchen, he's going to prefer that any day. Here's a rooftop, second story, in a building. They're complaining they got mosquitoes inside and roaches coming into that second floor. Well, I'm looking out this window and I see this puddle of water, and there's all that organic matter growing green. Well, they need to talk to a roofer and get this straightened out, because there was no screen on those louvers to help the air come in and out of that building, and all the mosquitoes and flies were coming in through there. Had nothing to do with pests. What am I going to do? Spray the entire rooftop every single week? These are problems that we can't control. They got mosquitoes all over the place, and going, where are the mosquitoes coming from? They're breeding up there. I don't know why I got roaches in my bathroom. If you look at this, if you understand American cockroaches, American cockroaches will eat absolutely anything. What is there to eat in that toilet? Well, there's fecal matter, and they love fecal matter. This is why they're in sewers. Underneath that rim, even if you clean it, they're going to find that little bit of fecal matter that's left, and they're going to eat it. They got food, and they have water. So being clean and being pest control clean are two different things. If we can exclude the pest, if the pest makes it in, the point is this. They're going to find food and water no matter where they are because they're adapted to finding the smallest amounts of food and water. So even if you're meticulously clean and a roach makes it in there, they will have enough food. And if you get a pair and they can breed, you're going to get breeding issues. And this is why a pesticide by itself will never solve the problem. Exclusion has to be in place. Pest prevention has to be in place. Water outside, full of larvae right next to a door. Mosquitoes are breeding in there. Plus, rats are going to come in there and drink. All the insects in the area will have all the water they need. Getting rid of that water would get rid of the mosquito problem that they were experiencing near the front door. Every time they opened the door, mosquitoes would get in. They're breeding in that pot. All right, so a place to hide. Mosquitoes, rodents, roaches need places to hide. They're experts at it. This is what is known as a crack. A void in the wall, a crack. Insects that invade homes are predominantly what are known as thigmotactic insects. They love to feel their body touching something and going into cracks and crevices. This is why a crack and crevice treatment is more effective than a baseboard spray. It just takes more time and more work. But if you caulk that and you seal it, the insect can't get behind there. If not, every single month, you got to come in with your crack and crevice device and go through those cracks and crevices, treating them again. Because if a pest makes it in, that's where they're going to want to go. Here's underneath the kitchen. They just remodeled this kitchen. Spend about $30,000 remodeling the kitchen. The contractor left holes behind the wall. Left all those cracks. And they're saying, I'm finding roaches in the kitchen. I'm finding roaches. We don't know where they're coming from. Well, they're coming from behind the wall. It's not sealed. The solution there is going under there with a foam sealant and an extension and reaching all the way back there and sealing all that so that the roaches don't find their way in. Because remember, they're finding their way in from outside that structure somewhere. And they're going into dark places, humid places, warm places to hide. If you remove the condition, putting all that bait back there was never, ever, ever going to solve all that problem. Look at that piece of dry wood that's cut out, that's missing. Roaches are coming in. We found live and dead American roaches under there. German roaches. Biggest mistake pest control people make is they don't go all the way to the back of that cabinet. They don't stick their body in there. Some of them get lazy. You see, they only come in and they spray the baseboards. And then they'll put a little bit of gel bait here and there. Never, ever, ever going back to where the roaches are. If you get all that gel bait and you buy a tube of gel bait online and you buy it at domyown.com and you only apply it to the open areas that you're seeing them outside, but you're not getting behind where they're hiding, you're going to fail every time. It doesn't matter how good anyone claims the product is. Without the right application of that product, it's never going to happen. Where do they like to be? In warm places, dark places. Look, they've been trying to control that roach problem. There are the roach discs, the little roach motels, the Max Force bait stations, and yet full of roaches. We had to pull that. Look at all the cracks around that tile, places where they can hide. They got the motor of the refrigerator, the compressor back there, which is warm. It has condensation. There's water. They can live back there and hide. And this is why everybody fails. They don't move that refrigerator. They just simply spray around it. Well, that's not going to work. Look at how many dead roaches there are back there after we've treated. So we got plenty of resources for you to learn about how to actually control these problems. If you go to naturepest.com, I've got a DIY podcast. We've got about 20 episodes on that coming out, and we've got more episodes on the way. And we also have a DIY blog that shows you how to actually solve specific problems. Here we can't get, why didn't you recommend any chemicals? Because I carry 30-something chemicals on the truck, products, to handle each individual problem. I mean, one problem alone could use up 3 different chemicals, 4 chemicals. For instance, dealing with drain flies, you got to use DSV, Nibor-D, and foam. And then outside, if you've got them, you got to spray it with an IGR and maybe a natural essential oil to control it outside. And then come back the following week and repeat it all over again for 2 to 3 weeks. So getting into specific pest control problems is going to be very difficult unless we create a blog. We also have the Pest Geek podcast, which this is an industry podcast for growing and operating a pest control business. This is not for the residents, although I have many, many technical and tactical podcasts which we get into depth, real depth, on solving difficult problems and solving routine issues that people miss on how to solve it. So if you got the patience and you want to dig through there and you want to get a real, if you're a building manager that says, man, I really got to know this stuff because I'm dealing with so many issues here and the pest control company isn't solving it and I need to know why. This is how you know why. Do you become a professional? There's also on Nature Pest on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. That YouTube channel has hundreds of videos on actual how to solve most German roach problems, American roach problems, drain fly problems, ant problems. Very, 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 very specific stuff in there. And there's the Pest Geek podcast on YouTube that also has many videos. But again, this is more focused on business development, business growth, and operating a pest control business. So if you're a professional, I've got a couple hundred videos in there too. And finally, we're coming up with the Pest Geek Academy, where we have certified for continuing education credit courses that we're going to be offering, and it's getting populated. We've got about 4 or 5 courses that we want to put in there, and these courses are going to be anywhere between one entire, like the CEU courses are 2 hours each. So 1 hour and 1 hour on something different, you get 2 CEU hours. The other courses are a new technician training course that has everything a technician needs to know about law, about IPM, about HCS, labels, SDSs, and all of these legal things that a technician needs to know before he starts to work. And then we're going to have actual training courses on how to deal with roach problems and ant problems and all kinds of different situations. These are real world training situations that we're trying to get into with a lot of this. So there you go. Those are all the resources. And we hope that this has been helpful to you to help you understand how to start tackling, and whether you have a competent pest control technician or a pest control company. If you have and you're looking for a holistic company, we're only in Miami-Dade, Broward, and we're going to be Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach soon. So mostly South Florida. We're planning to go into Naples and the Keys, but we're only dealing with South Florida. If you need a technician, a good IPM company that does holistic pest management, that does eco-friendly pest control, hey, feel free to drop us a message on Messenger. It's the best way through Facebook, either on Pest Geek podcast or on Nature Pest, because I get those messages no matter what system I'm on. I'm on 5 different phones sometimes. I'm on the computer. I'm on the road. I can always get a message there. You can, trying to call us is going to be very difficult because we get so many calls, and trying to call everybody back that needs help. But Messenger is the best way. If you're needing, also, if you go on you follow me, Franklin Hernandez, look up Franklin Hernandez Pest Control. Hey, I got hundreds of professionals, thousands. I mean, we got about 3,000 professionals that follow me on there. You feel free to drop a question in there and say, hey, I got this problem. I got this insect. Can somebody help me with this? We'd be more than glad to put all of our network at your disposal to help you and help pest control companies that maybe you can't solve the problem. Maybe you need a professional. We can get you a competent person on there that can help you. Hey, I hope this is beneficial. It's been helpful. This is Frank the Pest Geek wishing you a pestacular day. Thank you for listening to the DIY Pest Control Podcast. Please remember that although Franklin Hernandez is a certified and licensed pest control operator in the state of Florida, the content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. You should consult your local and state government or cooperative extension service before performing any pest control service. Remember to always read and follow label directions because the label is the law.